This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. Respectonomics is bringing you another edition of Living Economics. This one is called The K is Not Okay. My name is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I am your voice. I am your year of Respectonomics. And I particularly would like your comments and your feedback on this rollout of the economy today. And we're dealing, as you realize, with this K that is not okay. If you have feedback, let us have it. This is an issue that affects all of us. And not only is it an all of us kind of issue, it's one that needs to start at the grassroots. We need to bring this into reign. The letter K, as you will know, has an upright and two vectors or diagonals that work off that upright. They operate from exactly the same point. You don't see the letter K with one part going up and one part going down, starting at different points on the upright. They start at the same point. That's significant. And one slope goes up and one slope goes down. And the reason we refer to the economy as a K-shaped economy is to reflect on the upward movement that is taking place with people who are getting wealthier, who are accumulating assets, who find that they have more liquidity, more ability to save, spend, invest, borrow, and so on. And then we have the other slope that is going down, which in plain English is the people who are falling behind. One might think in terms of the rich, wealthy countries and those that are struggling. You could apply the K formula in a number of locations. But what we want to emphasize is this widening discrepancy of the upward slope and the downward slope, and starting from the same point, which again is very important. In other words, we as consumers, investors, borrowers, people who live in the economy, in other words, we all started from the same point. And as we realize from the letter K, one line is going up and one line is going down, which is not a stable formula. It doesn't make sense ethically or morally. And in fact, it's an economic failing as well, because the ones that are going down are not in a position to be strengthened, and also to strengthen the upper line, which may sound almost, doesn't the upper line have enough already? Well, yes, but if the upper line cannot be sustained because the lower line is dragging it down, the net effect, of course, is to flatline everybody. And in fact, probably once you get flatlining, then you're going backwards. But the issue that we're dealing with is, let's be very clear with one another. Why on the earth are we getting this K-shaped economy? Do we not have governments, and do we not have institutions and regulators and tax policies and schools, universities that talk about the ethics of wealth and so on? And candidly, a lot of this is turning out to be bunkum. It's not working. And we need to come to grips with what is the reason it is not working. And there's actually one word that brings it all together. And that is one word, and it's called governance. Now, governance is a word that often gets sort of muddled in with government. We're not talking about government. Everybody's got their views on government and democracy and voting procedures and so on. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about governance. And in the whole principle of governance, what you're trying to do is, in fact, you are able to do, is to have a process of accountability and delegation. If you have delegation with accountability, that means that if a task is done satisfactorily, then it gets rewarded appropriately. And if it isn't being done properly, then the accountability kicks in and that individual or that process is removed. That's it. So the thing is, what we've got at the moment is an arrangement politically and corporately in many aspects of community where the word governance has in fact spawned, bred the three P's. They're terrifying. The three P's are politics, privilege, and parasite. Politics, privilege, and parasite. And when we think in terms of politics, we so often think of the way in which the vote and the opinions of people are sort of marched along and put into a corridor and therefore can be enacted. And everybody knows that's not working. And the reason it's not working is because systemically, what we have created is a structure that doesn't have accountability in it. If you don't have accountability in any organization, then in fact, that whole rather nasty side of human behavior starts creeping in, which goes something like, if I can get away with it, I will do it. And we all know that as school children. We know that even when we're sort of speeding down the road and think, can we get away with it? There's a get away with it mentality that it pervades a lot of how we operate. So accountability is a very good way of bringing us in line. But if the process of accountability doesn't exist, then we create this opportunity for politics, this opportunity for parasitism, and also for this sense of privilege. What we need to understand also is we talk about wealth. Wealth, there's nothing wrong with wealth in and of itself. The catch is whether the wealth is a reflection of value or is a reflection of political what would you call it? Excuse me. Um, Political parasitism. Political meaning, how often do you hear in corporate life, yes, that individual knows how to move around politically and is able, therefore, to create all kinds of wealth for themselves. Well, it's not wealth in the proper sense of the word. And at the same time, it's parasitical. Parasitical means, and think about the people that you know of in places of power and ask whether the word parasite applies. Parasite means that they are sucking on the host, that's what it means, and one day the host will in fact die. That's what a parasite does, and then a parasite moves on to something else. Do you not have that feeling that a lot of what is being done at the moment is leaving us sort of almost like a coffin and sucking whatever life it can out and whatever's left goes into the coffin. It's not the way it's meant to be. And the overall effect, of course, is significantly to reduce the profitability, the productivity of the economy in the real sense. So, when we're looking at governance, for example, if you have a company and if you have a board of directors today have become very sort of apt. First of all, many boards of directors are in the hands of, they are captive to the chief executive officer. That is absolutely wrong. The board of directors needs to be independent. It needs to give the marching orders, the policies to the CEO, tell him or her to get on with it. If they do it, great. And if they don't, well, we move to another CEO. There it is, accountability 101. But we're not seeing that. And not only are we seeing that, we're seeing misplaced boards of directors. We don't need to be an expert in concept of governance, but we do need to understand that, for example, if you have a board of directors, its function is to protect the interests of the owners, not the stakeholders, the owners. And the owner wants two things, safety of capital and income. That's what they're in the business for. If you think about it, if you were opening up a bakery, you would say to yourself, I want to invest the money, I want to make sure I get my money back, and I want an income that's going to keep me and my family going in the foreseeable future. That is the rights and the whole purpose of ownership. Nothing wrong with that. But where this whole capitalistic arrangement has gone wrong is that because the combination of the boards of directors and CEOs had been moving, let's just say, apart and away from the mandate of what good governance truly demands, because of that, you get these incredible inequalities and these imperfections. How do you explain CEOs generating 600, 700, 1,000 times the average earnings of a regular employee? It doesn't make any sense. So, the first thing we need to do is to get back into a world of competent governance where we actually hold people accountable. That's true in the corporate world, it's true in the political world, it's true in communities, and so on. Here's the catch. Most people would say, well, I don't know a lot about governance. Fair enough. Secondly, most people would also say, well, what can I do about it? And here's the answer. In every arrangement that we're in, so whether it's a service club, whether it's a faith organization, whether it's a corporation, a council, an assembly of politicians, an assembly of people, a political entity, take any organization that you know, any that you know of, and we're all involved in organizations somewhere or other, Girl Guides, whatever it would be. But you go to that organization, and when it comes to question time, here is the question. Please explain your perspective on governance. Let's get that word out there. Let's create a responsibility from people in organizations to respect and dignify the very essence of governance so that there is a correct linear connection between the jobs that people are asked to do, the duties that they accept to do, and the accountability that comes with it. Because without that accountability, basically the wagon wheels come off and the wagon will go in any direction it wants. And because of the very nature of capitalism and people's aptitude to make money and all that, it creates these extraordinary imbalances. The three P's. We talked about the parasitism, we've talked about the politics in the true sense. Politics is basically a parasitical arrangement. It isn't one the way you would say this is a noble concept. A noble concept is good governance. And then we hear this other word of P where we talk about privilege. And we see this again, this extraordinary imbalance where people feel that they are privileged and that they have a privilege and that they can execute it to their wish, wills, and discretion. I would say to you, morally and economically, productivity wise, any word you really want to think of those kinds, you would say this is inappropriate. But there's one other thing we need to do, and this is going to come to the heart of government as we understand it in today's world. Everybody knows, it's not exactly a state secret, that money is being borrowed by governments and institutions and corporations in amounts and volumes and frequency, the likes of which we have never seen before. So we know that this huge deficit financing is in full bore. It's in the fast lane and it just wants to get faster and faster. Here is the one truth about deficit financing. You can have whatever view you like about the way it rescues an economy or it does this, that, or the other. But here's one of the problems with persistent deficits. They always end up, it's like financial plumbing. It's like when you turn the tap on. What happens when you turn the tap on? It fills the sink. When we turn on the debt button, it fills the people who are closest to the government. And the people who are closest to the government are the people that have lobbied, have got themselves in there, and have defied and actually discounted and hijacked any concept of governance. Whether you put that onto a moral plane or whether you put it onto a very logistical, forensic plane from an accounting point of view, but you will notice that deficits create extraordinary wealth and extraordinary quarters, and not the kind of wealth that is associated where value has been created. It is true to say it is a non-political statement. This is pure economics. It's pure survival. It's pure, what would you call it? a balanced prospect for the future. The whole concept of deficit financing is out of control and it is moving us closer and closer to the chasm. The chasm is when you go over the edge and you can't even see the bottom. It's gone, it's done, we're done. So, with all of this in mind, two things. We go to meetings, we go to our organizations, and we just ask in very elementary, very polite terminology, tell me your opinion about governance. That's the first step. And the second step is to start holding, under the heading of accountability, is to hold politicians and leaders, government, corporate, whatever they would be, community, to hold them liable, or at least responsible for and accountable for the debt and the deficits, and say, what is your opinion of deficits? You don't have to give your opinion, but you can certainly ask that question. Two questions we need to ask. This K-shaped economy is unacceptable. It is avoidable. It is dangerous. It is one that creates great anger and great frustration. It might even be creating something that goes beyond anger, beyond frustration. And I'll leave you to imagine what that can be. But if you look at all the great revolutions, all the revolutions in history, whether the French Revolution or the Russian Revolution, it's always because the K was out of line. And our K is getting out of line. I want to leave you with one thought. It's not a question, it's a statement. And that is, if you take the letter K and you think of its component parts, what letter can that be formed into? Could it be turned into a C or could it be turned into a B or something? And actually, the only other letter that it can be turned into is a Y. And a Y means that you have an upright with two extended arms, both going up towards the air. Here's your sort of question of the day. If you put your hands up in the air in the shape of a Y, my question is, how long can you keep your hands up? 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes? It's not very long before your shoulders and your arms and your neck and everything give up on you. So turning the K into some other shape really, really isn't effective. The K needs to be removed and has to be replaced with either a U or a V, but where we can actually say, yes, one side did come down, but the other side's going up. And we want to be the part, we all want to be the part that's going up. We want it for ourselves, we want it for our stability and security, but we also want that V shape to reflect the victory that we want to be able to pronounce in our legacies for our children and our grandchildren, and actually for the security and stability of the planet. Done with K, and I'm up with V. Thank you for listening. I would very much appreciate your comments and ideas that you may have on this, but I'll take you back to the first line. K is not okay. Thank you so much for listening. Jeremy at respectonomics.com, Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, Respectonomics, that's the web. Jeremy at Respectonomics is the email. Send us your thoughts or get us in front of you to talk about these things to wider audiences or specialized audiences, workshops, presentations, speeches. But let's get this word out because it can't go on like this. Thank you again for listening.